The public has always been way ahead of its elected leadership with respect to the war in Iraq. It's been the veterans of previous wars that have been able to distinguish the difference between the war and the warriors. God bless those warriors. God bless the men and women who wear the uniform of this country and the sacrifices that they make on our behalf. And for so many from Desert Storm and from Vietnam and Korea who have come forward and spoken out and said how wrong-headed this mission has been. Next week as well, Foreign Relations will take up a bill so that we will not invade Iran without congressional approval. Next week, we will take up a bill that says we will end the policies of unilateralism and preemption that got us here in the first place.
4 years ago, I voted against authorizing the President of the United States to go to war because I said on the floor of House of Representatives, I believe that taking unilateral action against Iraq would, and I quote, weaken our moral authority, our military effectiveness, and our ability to keep events under control afterwards. The most alarming of all of our concerns is the deteriorating welfare of our troops and those returning home in need of care. Of course, every American takes comfort in the heroism and the determination our soldiers have shown. They have performed magnificently, but they have been charged with an impossible mission that undermines their incalculable sacrifice and has strained our military in countless ways from manpower to morale. As the father of one Marine whose son has been deployed for the second time to Iraq wrote to me, and I quote, "You forget what it is like to actually sleep at night without waking up to the horrible thought that you might never see your son again." From Senator Christopher J. Dodd, I am sorry I could not be with you in person today, but proud I was able to participate in the planning of this event. You are a voice for change at a time when America needs you to be. I know each of you is here because you feel a sense of obligation, a profound and deeply held belief that this war in Iraq has done great damage to our leadership in the world. And I know each of us honors the service and sacrifice of our troops. But you are also speaking out because you feel a sense of urgency about this issue. You want to know how many debates, how many reports, how many killed and wounded it will take before President Bush and his advisors will acknowledge that his Iraq policy has been a failure from almost day one.
Now receive with me Secretary of State Susan Bicewicz.
Good afternoon. I will tell you that the most difficult thing that I have had to do as Secretary of the State is to attend the 37 funerals of the young men and women from our state who have died in Iraq and Afghanistan. And they ranged in age from 18 to 40. And I will tell you, as the mother of 3 teenagers, that it is my obligation to speak out against the war because I do not want any more of our Connecticut young men and women to die in the global war on terror. And over 3,100 young men and women from our country have died, and over 23,000 have been wounded in combat. And our government has not supported them when they have been in combat with the proper equipment, nor have we taken care of them as they need when they have returned home to our country. And so today I say, and please join me, enough is enough.
Last November 7th was the biggest demonstration for peace in this country in a long time. The people of this country voted against this war. We voted a lot of representatives to take office to get us out of this war. In 4 years, we've lost 3,200 American troops killed and tens of thousands wounded, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis dead, 3 million refugees, and we don't know how many wounded. The war has to come to an end now. Now means now. We need to let our congressmen know, and in particular we need to let Chris Shays and Joe Lieberman know that they are out of touch with the American people. They don't represent the American people. They're going in the wrong direction, and they need to reverse 180 degrees.
Friends, we knew, most of us, if not all of us, knew 4 years ago that this war was a tragic mistake, that this war was based on lies, that there were no weapons of mass destruction, that there was no connection to September 11th or Al-Qaeda, that we would not be heralded as heroes and liberators on the streets of Baghdad, that the world would not be safer, that we would not be safer. We knew that this war was not about freedom, but about greed and power, and ultimately the curtailment of freedoms that might stand in the way of the satisfaction of those lusts. Now, 4 years later, we are not the lone voices we once felt we were. The people of our country obviously want new leadership and new direction. And in increasing numbers, they want this war to end. Except for the tired and hackneyed rhetoric of Bush and Cheney and their cronies, the post-9/11 jingoism is beginning to die down. We can take pride in this, that our faithful presence, that our relentless opposition, that our continued vigilance and agitation and outspokenness, that the demonstrations we organized and the signs we held and the rainy, cold, and snowy days we gathered and the meetings we attended and the tears we shed and the energy we expended, like drops of water slowly, steadily carving a hole in a stone, have created an opening, have contributed to the awakening of our nation to the fact that this war is a travesty and that the emperor has no clothes.
We have to go back and make sure that on the web, voice to voice, face to face, person to person, the word spreads from here to Washington that America is a better place than this war. That Americans are better than the president who leads us. And that we are profoundly grateful for those men and women who served there, who have died there, who have come back with broken lives from there. And what we do to honor them is to be sure that we send no more. Let this war end now.
I'm a major in the United States Army Reserve and a veteran of the Iraq War. 4 years ago, we went to war in Iraq. As we look back on 4 years of war in Iraq, we should ask why and for what. Those who oppose the war in Iraq are told that we should not revisit this issue. This is an affront to all Americans, particularly those few that have been asked to sacrifice so much. Allowing those who placed our service members in harm's way to avoid their mistakes is to free them of the responsibility that we do not lessen for soldiers and Marines who make mistakes in the heat of battle. I believe it is our duty to determine if we have acted hastily. We as a nation have an obligation to our citizens, and particularly our men and women in uniform, to determine how we came where we are in Iraq and where we are going. I do not recognize, nor do I support, a patriotism that demands our silence. We went into Iraq without a plan. We have continued for 4 years without a plan. This is irresponsible and unfair to our troops.
Criminal! It's criminal! Yes!
Like previous plans, such as stay the course, the present surge is yet another slogan. During my time in Iraq, it became very clear to me that the efforts of our military, which have been valiant, could not and will not turn Iraq into a progressive, democratic, rule of law abiding, human rights protecting state. What I saw in my time there was a nation deeply divided by sectarian and ethnic differences. There is no exit strategy under this administration that addresses such an environment. I would like to speak about and have you all reflect upon the effects these mistakes and the toll they have taken on a small number of Americans, the service members and their families. Who are these Americans? 4 years ago, a March ambush in Iraq showed us who they were. A young soldier was badly wounded. Her name was Jessica Lynch, and she was and is emblematic of our troops there and now in Iraq. Like most soldiers, she comes from modest means. She comes from a relatively impoverished rural town. This is, for the most part, not a war of the middle or upper classes. We should and we must acknowledge that we have subjected the citizen soldiers, in addition to the active duty military, the citizen soldiers of the reserves and the National Guard, to a hidden draft. Further, it is a particularly insidious hidden draft. There is no end in sight for them. They face multiple deployments. They and their families live in constant anxiety that they would be pulled from their loved ones, from their jobs, from their communities. Winston Churchill in World War II said of the RAF pilots in the Battle of Britain that never, in the field of human conflict, was so much owed by so many to so few. The same could be said of our service members. Finally, I would ask you to reflect upon those who have paid the highest price for this ideological gambit, the dead and the wounded. I ask that you honor the dead. They did not make this war. They fought it. I ask that you cherish the wounded. Do not let them be forgotten. Care for them and care for their families. It is the least that we can do for them. Please make sure that the medical care that they receive honors and respects the sacrifices that they have made.
They separating us through black and white. They separating us through day and night. They separating us through rich and poor. They separating us through less and more. Come together, my people. Come together, my people. Come together, my people. Unite, unite, unite. Come together, my people. Come together, my people. Come together, my people. Unite, unite, unite. All right.